This is It Was a Thing on TV.
Total Red Man has ever done something like this to me!
It's, time!
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the dregs of humanity!
Welcome to the It Was a Thing on TV podcast, episode 14, submission 005, Supertrain. Supertrain aired on NBC and ran from February 7th of 1979 to May 5th of 1979 for 9 episodes.
All aboard!
That was Chico, by the way, but we didn't play the theme first. We'll get to the theme a little bit later because there's a lot to break down there. Greg's here too. Say hi to the nice people, Greg.
Hi to the nice people, Greg.
Good job. You get a cookie. And I'm Mike Klaus, and this is bad. This is a bad show.
Oh, God.
So Supertrain, where do we start? Well, we'll start with its origins. There was a 2-hour TV movie, and, oh, mercy, was that a slog and a half. But I sort of wonder why they just did the TV movie to begin with, because they committed so much money to this, you knew that the series was inevitable.
Well, the 2-hour movie was actually a pilot for the TV series.
Yeah, but they still, I mean, if it's a pilot, they still built this train and all this other stuff. I mean, you're sort of, committed if...
Yeah, this was pretty much a straight-to-series order that eventually became part of a legacy for NBC at the time.
Which we'll get to in a little bit. But the big thing for NBC was they didn't outsource this to another production company. They did everything in-house. And the reason for that was financial. Supertrain was surely going to succeed. You had Fred Silverman behind it, and you saw the popularity of the Love Boat. So, you know what? This can't fail. Enter laugh track here. So, yeah, since they thought this is going to be this mega super hit following in the footsteps of Love Boat, they're going to reap the profits of syndication and maybe some sort of product licensing or selling it overseas. And they did actually sell it overseas.
Yeah, they sold it to the BBC, but it was so rubbish they didn't air it.
They sold it to the Beeb. And we're not talking Justin Bieber, we're talking the BBC. And then they sold it for $25,000 an episode. But, as Chico said...
It was so rubbish that they didn't air it.
Yeah. So, good job whiffing there, NBC.
Even the Brits have standards. They're like, no, we're not going to have our people suffer through this.
And on top of that, just the costs of this train. We've seen different numbers. The number we heard was $5 million. But in doing research for this week, because we do a minimal amount of research, I saw numbers of $7 million and $12 million. And those aren't inflation-adjusted numbers. These are numbers that I found in the early 80s, doing some search in some archives. So $12 million for this giant train that had to fit in 2 studios. That's how big the set was. It had to fit in 2 studios. It was doomed to fail. I mean, just looking at it. And they made not just the big model, they made 2 smaller models for different scenes. They made a roughly 1/10 scale model, 1 1/4 inches to the foot. And what that did was it created realistic medium distance details. And then for long shots, they had a version of the Supertrain at a 1/4 inch to a foot scale, 1/48 scale. And it was actually on a giant track. The miniature train, the baby of all 3, It was on a train in Los Angeles, an outside location in Los Angeles, and it had miniature towns and landscapes, and the track was 3,000 feet long. So that's over half a mile of this little toy train. Again, huge expenses. I mean, they really went all out. And actually, now that I look, I see a fourth number. So we had $5 million, $7 million, $12 million. Now I see $10 million. Who did accounting at NBC in 1979?
Well,
why are we getting four vastly different numbers? And actually, there's a fifth number. I heard somebody say $6 million. $5 million, $6 million, $7 million, $10 million, $12 million. Are there no accounting practices at NBC where somebody can go back and look at the ledger and say, oh, Supertrain, it cost $5.2 million. Why are we seeing numbers like $12 million?
Mike,
That's horrible accounting.
Mike, this was 1979. This was the time when John Belushi was doing coke in the lobby of 30 Rock.
And he must have been doing the books, too, while he was at it. I mean, cripes, I took 2 accounting classes when I was an accounting major, and I did a better job. What the heck? Seriously.
Okay. All right, now that we've thoroughly triggered Mike, obviously the star of the show is the train.
Yes, the Supertrain.
That's a problem. I got I know that the train is the star in this case, but the boat on Love Boat, was that necessarily the star of Love Boat?
No, the star of the Love Boat were the stars. Everybody else was just secondary. But
right.
They made a point. They made a point on almost every episode to stress just how incredibly decadent this train was. It's got everything. It's got a disco and a pool and a bordello. It doesn't really have a board.
I got a question. Why does a moving train have a pool?
Why does a moving train have a pool?
And why does this train, for as lavish and extravagant as it is, why doesn't it have aisles wide enough for more than one person at a time?
Well, let me tell you, Mike, it runs on Time Lord technology.
Well, I get it's like a TARDIS. I fully get that. It's bigger on the inside, but it wasn't big enough for, aisles where 2 people can go through?
Nope.
Come on, okay.
You have to have all that room for rooms.
Well, the sleeping quarters aren't that big on most of these trains unless they're giving people, small bedrooms, like spare bedrooms. But, 22 feet, you could put in 2 small bedrooms, and you'd still have, realistically, maybe 5 feet of space in the aisle. No, like I said, this is ridiculous. I'm just... It seems good on paper, but it's not really realistic. Well, that may be half the point. It's not realistic. But, okay, yeah, the train... What if the train has to stop all of a sudden and you're in the pool? You're going to get such a tidal wave, it's going to splash water over
wave pool.
You're going to get chlorine in your eyes. It's going to start rusting out the metal parts of the train because of that splashing. Yeah, that's a problem. I can understand if it's a jacuzzi, but not a full-size pool.
Yeah, it's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
That's why they have the compute. That's why they have the computer on board announcing, "Attention! May I have your attention, please? Supertrain will be stopping in 30 minutes." Probably a signal. Okay, everybody out of the pool.
Yeah, and was there even a lifeguard at the pool? How uncertified was this? You didn't see anybody in the opening credits as, Chet the lifeguard.
No, we just saw the 2 personal... Let's see, we saw the 2 personal trainers, we saw the conductor, we saw the porter, we saw whatever Michael Delano does.
Okay, space filler. and you did have Charlie Brill as sort of like a hairdresser, because they had obviously some sort of salon on board.
You have to have some sort of salon on board if you're going to the disco later that night.
But yeah, I mean, I don't get it. I don't get it. I'm just gonna. That's gonna be this episode. It's gonna be like subtitled. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Can we get into the insane amount of promotion NBC tried to do with the Today Show?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh yeah. Because Gene Shalit, as much as he was one of the preeminent film critics of our age, he is a company man. I mean,
he was a company man. Oh, yes.
Oh, he is showing the absolute crap for Supertrain. And then we get into the report by Jack Perkins. It's only 10 more years before biography, Jack, so hold it together. Telling us, normally I interview the stars of the new shows on NBC, but I can't do it in this case because the star in this case is a train.
It's a train.
Did Jack Perkins interview Mr. Smith?
I hope to God that there's a clip somewhere in the NBC News archives where Jack Perkins is interviewing Leonard Fry and Mr. Smith. I can only pray.
Oh, I don't care about Leonard Fry. I just care about Mr. Smith. But yeah, they did a piece, like a 7-minute piece on Today. Oh, and be sure to watch Supertrain premiering tonight on NBC. Some folks didn't get the message.
No, they were busy going, my God, that train is huge.
You know, that's not even the biggest problem I have with the clip. The biggest problem I have with the clip is Tom Brokaw narrating the scene with Houston, Texas, to that weird Sesame Street sounding music. It's like, what the hell is this?
It's called the late 70s.
I know, but like, what is this? When I hear this music, I'm thinking, where's Bert and Ernie? Where's Big Bird? Why am I looking at a skyline of Houston?
Some questions cannot be answered.
No.
So yeah, I mean, NBC put everything they could towards this, and
they gave it everything they got on this show.
Oh yes, and we're going to get into some of the changes that happened over time a little bit later. The one thing, and I told Chico and Greg this earlier, that was really lacking on Supertrain was they didn't really have the star power that you had on Love Boat. You had Bernie Capel, and we know what he brings to the table. Fred Grandy, I believe, was reasonably new to the business at the time. This is like his first major show, but Bernie Capel had been on Get Smart and a number of other shows before then. And so you had these known quantities on Love Boat. There were known quantities on Supertrain, but the other names just weren't familiar, really. So the person first we've got to start off with the pilot, the person who built the Supertrain. I'm doing this for Greg because
yes.
Greg ranted and raved about this the other night. So the person that built the Supertrain, or at least the business that created the Supertrain, tell them who it was and the whole story behind that.
Yes, the creator of the Supertrain was the actor Keenan Wynn. Now, Keenan Wynn you might know as the villain Alonzo P. Hawk in various Disney movies like the Absent-Minded Professor. He was kind of like the prototypical Thanos of his day. He would kind of just randomly show up in these Disney movies as this villain Alonzo Hawk. It was really something.
Greg is an expert on Disney movie villains, by the way.
And also, his name isn't just Keenan Wynn. His full name is Francis Xavier Aloysius James Jeremiah Keenan Wynn.
Yeah, if you want to play a big-ass villain in a Disney movie, you have to have, a real name.
The 7-name rule is in effect.
Yes. So, Keenan Wynn plays Winfield Root, the chairman at the fictitious Trans-Allied Corporation, and he mentions to his board at a meeting he will create the first transcontinental railroad that will be capable of going from New York to Los Angeles in 36 hours. And then a guy says, you know, Winfield, I think you're letting your psychotic fascination with railroads put you into a suicidal gamble with this company. And so Winfield Root's like, is that a bet? Well, guess what, folks? Here's a painting of the Supertrain. And he reveals it, and they're like, oh my god, this is incredible. That's how you win a room. Just wait.
Like, this is, it's like, bitch! Challenge accepted, let's go!
Well, also, I think he sold it on, it was an atom-powered steam turbine.
Yeah.
Because technically, isn't everything like atom-powered? Well, not in that sense, but, you know, everything is made up of atoms. Never mind, I'm not a science teacher. But, so yeah. And then 22 months later, it made its maiden voyage out of Grand Central Terminal, New York City.
Now, here's the thing I don't get. I've taken a train to New York City before. You don't go to Grand Central. You go to Penn Station. You leave out of Penn Station.
Yeah, that's where the action is. That's where if you want to go to Madison Square Garden, baby, you go to Penn Station.
Yeah, you go to Penn Station, and if you want to take the train to anywhere that is not New York City, you go out of Penn Station. You don't go out of Grand Central.
Well, I'm going to offer why it was probably chosen. Grand Central Station, I think, is more popular than Penn Station, even though Penn Station may be more worthwhile. Got to go for a name.
True.
Yeah. So, also about TransAllied Corporation, Greg said that Winfield Root was the chairman of this company. Who else was employed by the TransAllied Corporation? I see your hand, Greg.
Mr. Drummond.
Mr. Drummond from Different Strokes. And what does that mean, Greg?
That means that Supertrain takes place in the same universe as Hello, Larry.
Supertrain is part of the Tommy Westphall universe. Exactly.
Well, that too.
But yeah, I mean, not only is it in the Tommy Westphall universe, but you're right. Since Different Strokes and Hello, Larry had crossover episodes, and they're in the same universe as if you will, then Supertrain has to be in that universe too.
So you're saying Supertrain doesn't exist then?
Supertrain is a figment of Tommy Westphall's imagination.
That would explain so much.
And wouldn't that also make NBC part of Tommy Westphall's imagination? So Tommy Westphall almost made NBC go bankrupt because of this? And Tommy Westphall's a tyrant!
Yeah, that Chad Allen, he's evil.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the cast of the show, there's a few names you've heard. Edward Andrews was Harry Flood.
The conductor of the Supertrain.
Yeah, the conductor. And Patrick Collins was Dave Noonan.
Who was sort of the social director.
Kind of, sort of, yeah.
Kind of, sort of.
Okay, one name that's somewhat familiar. Harrison Page. He was George Boone.
The porter. Yeah, this is where you have the sort of PC police come, because you got the only black dude on the cast, and he's the porter.
And then you have Robert Alda, Alan's father, who played Dr. Dan Lewis.
Because every good train needs a doctor.
Absolutely. Nina Talbot was Rose Casey.
The nurse to Dr. Lewis?
I do believe so. Erica Wells was Gilda, and Bill Knuckles was Wally.
Bill Knuckles?
Bill Knuckles. He who played Hawkman on Future Induction, Legends of the Superheroes.
And they were sort of the fitness instructors on the Supertrain. And then Michael Delano as Lou Atkins. And here's another name that people will recognize. Charlie Brill as Robert. And they were sort of running the the hair salon. There's a hair salon aboard the train.
Well, if you're going to the disco, you need to get your hair game. You need to get your hair did.
You got that right. You got to look good for that disco. Yep. And then, at least in the first episode, there's a number of big guest stars. Steve Lawrence, but not with Edie Gourmet, interestingly enough. Steve Lawrence was by himself on this. You had, we mentioned Keenan Wynn as Winfield Root, as the chairman of TransAllied Corporation. Ron Masak, he was on this first episode. You would recognize him from Vlasic Pickles.
Season. Yeah,
I remember. I remember him from being the Vlasic Pickles stork. But what were you going to say?
The first season of One Day at a Time, with as Anne Romano's ex-husband. I may be wrong on that, but
I just remember him from Pickles. What can I say? It's a big deal to me. Oh, jeez. I'm sorry.
Go to your room and think about what you've done, Mike.
I'm already regretting it right now. And then Dandy Don Meredith was Rick Prince. Vicki Lawrence, she was Karen Prince. George Hamilton was on the Supertrain. And then you had a bunch of people who don't have sources on Wikipedia.
Hold up. Stella Stevens and Fred Williamson were also on the Supertrain.
Oh, Stella Stevens. Yeah, she's somebody. I'm sorry. She was a person on TV.
And, of course, Fred Williamson. So you have two former Monday Night Football personalities on the Supertrain.
And even they couldn't save the Supertrain.
That's sad.
And then in episode 2, a couple more names that you've recognized. Larry Linville, another MASH alumnus. Dick Van Dyke, there's a big name. And Barbara Rhodes, she was a name that floated around quite a bit in the late 70s. And there's like nobody on episode 3.
That's probably why it didn't do as well, because there was nobody on episode 3. If there's nobody on episode 3, then you've already lost everybody.
And really 4 and 5 as well. Episode 6, Joyce DeWitt, Isabel Sanford, and Tony Danza.
Yeah, interesting thing about episode 6. Because NBC wasn't getting the return that they were looking for on Supertrain. They actually had to pull it for massive retooling.
Yeah, but also in episode 6, there's a promo on YouTube, and also Bernie Capel, the aforementioned Bernie Capel, appeared on this episode, as well as, amazingly, Vic
Tayback.
Vic Tayback and Jamie Four.
And Mako. He of Samurai Jack fame.
Yeah.
I'm going to make an observation before we go on to the last few episodes. Have you noticed that most every celebrity on Supertrain was on a show on another network? Tony Danza would have been on Taxi, and Isabel Sanford was on The Jeffersons, obviously. And Joyce DeWitt was on Three's Company, and Larry Linville was on MASH. Why couldn't they have gotten somebody from within? I mean, I know times were thin at NBC in '79, but really?
You really wanted McLean Stevenson on the Supertrain?
Hold up, Mike. You skipped episode 4 because there were 2 notable guest stars on that episode. Okay,
I didn't see it on what I'm reading. Okay.
Because it did listed on Wikipedia. But that's the episode that features Billy Barty along with Loretta Swit.
Oh, jeez.
And you want me to explain the plot of episode 4?
There's a lot to break down in episode 4. Go for it.
Okay.
Well, boy.
We're gonna play the promo for episode 4 right here.
On this week's Supertrain Mystery, Hail to the Chief. 2 dwarfs and a magician replace a presidential candidate with a double so real Even his wife can't tell.
JJ, all I want to do right now is go to bed.
On Supertrain.
Yes, folks, you are not just hearing things. That is the plot of episode 4 right there in a nutshell. 2 dwarves and a magician replace a presidential candidate so real that even his wife, played by Loretta Swit, cannot tell. When I showed this clip from this episode to a notable person by the name of Derek, his response was, after watching the promo, I couldn't do it. The title of the show coming in like the goddamn Superman logo in a cartoon is what got me. He could not make it through 1 second. He saw the logo pop up, Supertrain, and he was like, nope, I'm done. No.
I at least lasted the whole episode, even though it took me about 10 minutes to skim through it.
Well, let me ask you something. Those dwarves, were they Greg and John Rice by any chance?
Oh, jeez.
What? You needed a dwarf in the 70s? You go to Greg and John Rice.
And if Supertrain was around till the 90s, they would have tried selling you on real estate.
Oh, jeez.
And the final episode, Barry Gordon and Rue McClanahan were guests. Now, admittedly, Rue McClanahan wasn't really on a show at this time because you had Maude, which got canceled the previous year, or not necessarily canceled, but ended the previous year in 78, and you wouldn't have her going to Mama's Family or Golden Girls until 83 and 85, respectively.
Which would just be sad.
So, yeah, it just doesn't have the star power that Love Boat would have, because you'd have the guests running for it seemed like 2 minutes on every episode, and you'd be like, oh, I know who that is. I know who Elaine Joyce is. Oh, there's Gene Rayburn. And, oh, look at that. There's all these stars that you recognize, and they just didn't have it on this.
No, they did not.
But also, in addition, something else that hurt besides the lack of name stars, not just name stars, but a mass quantity of name stars, the changes.
Oh, boy. Yeah. So, NBC didn't like that they were getting what Dan Curtis had promised that he would bring to the table. So they fired him. They brought in Robert Stambler, and they basically redid the whole show. They brought him in and redid the whole show to emphasize intrigue and suspense. Basically, make the entire show into an hour-long Murder on the Orient Express.
And then when that didn't work, for the final episode, they actually added a laugh track. So now you're sort of getting even closer to Love Boat territory. So now it's not really Murder on the Orient Express. It's now Love Boat on a Train. It's sort of a comedy and sort of a drama. It's a dramedy like a decade before 30-something. So yeah, they didn't know what they were doing. And on top of that, like, everybody except Harrison Page and Robert Alda got fired.
And Edward Andrews.
Yeah, well, like, everybody except like 2 or 3 people got fired about halfway through the run, about episode 4, episode 5. And they brought aboard a new staff, and really the only name that I recognized on the new staff was Eileen Graff, who would go on to play Bob Uecker's wife on Mr. Belvedere. But yeah, I mean, they just tried everything. They tried a new 2/3 of the staff being replaced. They tried going from this Murder on the Orient Express into a sort of comedy, and nothing worked. And then, on top of all this, as I mentioned at the start of the show, I didn't play the theme music. Why not? Because realistically, there were 3, and even if you consider the pilot, 4 different opens on a show that ran 9 episodes. So we're going to go through those really fast with the first open. and then the modified first open with a little bit different music. And the third one is what they used, I believe it was starting about show 5, once they cleaned house and retooled it like Chico said earlier. And you could hear differences in the theme song. And so here's theme 1. Here's open number 2. And the final open. In addition to the different opens and the different graphics, the music. Oh, the music was amazing. The music was done by Bob Cobert, he's a living legend. He's like 95 years old now, still alive, thank heavens. But he made some of the best music ever. He's up there with, say, Henry Mancini.
Yep.
Would you agree?
Yes.
I would. And again, his work is out there. Some of the discotheque tracks that you hear on this show, they recycled them and used it as the theme song to two versions of Chain Reaction in the 80s.
Yeah, you sort of hear that in some of the opens, or in one of the opens that were played just a few moments ago. But on top of that, not only do you have Chain Reaction in there, you have this clip. So that music was reused. It was less disco-y, less brassy, and a little bit faster tempo. Do either of you guys know where that was later used about, almost 7 years later, about 6.5 years later?
Would that be the Nipsey Russell 1985 game show Your Number's Up?
Yeah, that was the win thing. When somebody won the car, and I believe it was when they won the bonus game too, they played that music. And the thing that goes to my mind when I hear that music is I see Nipsey Russell marching around and just acting, oh my gosh, just like a total goofball.
We're going to cover a little commercial ground, but we'll be back, so stick around.
So I don't know if you saw this on the Hail to the Chief episode with Billy Barty. Did you see where that music was used, or did you hear where that music was used?
Can't remember.
Do you remember, Greg? If you don't, I'm going to tell you, but...
Is it Chain Reaction?
No. This is the Your Number's Up music.
Oh, okay.
Did you see where it was used in that show in Hail to the Chief?
No.
Okay, now, if you listen to it, what does it sound like? It sounds like good traveling music, doesn't it? You're going past, like, let's say the plains in Nebraska or Kansas. That sounds like good traveling music, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What you getting at, man?
It wasn't used as traveling music. That was music that was actually played in the disco. And they're dancing to it! I'm sorry. No, that is not disco music that I'd be dancing to. I'd be like, okay, all you stop right now, because, spoiler, in 6.5 years, Nipsey Russell's going to be marching to that music when somebody wins a friggin' Jetta.
Uh-huh.
But no, I mean, seriously, they used it in the disco, and that's like the least disco-y music that I'd like dance to.
It's crazy.
And staying with the Hail to the Chief stuff, there was a segment where Billy Barty and his compatriot, his dwarf compatriot, they were doing something, I think sneaking into somebody's bedroom or something like that. And did you notice what sound effect played when they did that?
No.
No. You didn't notice. I'm going to play it right here. It's the sound effect that was used on Jackpot back in the mid to late 80s when somebody got the question wrong and they had to cross over. That yeah.
I that did sound like a little. How can I put this? A little like something's about to happen.
Yeah, it did sound like that, though. Like something's going to happen, and they were being very, suspicious. Obviously, it looked like they were, I believe, sneaking into somebody's bedroom or train car, trying to steal something. And yeah, then they played the jackpot crossing over music. I thought that was very interesting, but it's a very, kind of creepy song. You knew trouble was going to happen.
Yeah. Tell you what, in the poker episode, they didn't really go for that. They went for like generic, something is about to happen sort of episode.
It's like, we got Roddy McDowell, we got Cleavon Little for this episode. It's like, what more else do we need to add to this?
Okay, I got an issue with the poker episode. And it isn't about the poker game itself. Now, first off, the type of poker they were playing is not Texas Hold'em. It's not 5-card stud or draw or anything like that. I don't even know what type of poker they were playing unless they just made it up for the show.
Probably just made it up for the show.
Yeah, but I mean, it looked like, they're like playing Uno, slapping cards down, and I had no idea what was going on. But the other takeaway from that episode, in the disco, what would you be doing in a disco? What if you were at Studio 54?
I would be doing disco dance. What would I be doing? I would be doing disco dancing. Somebody would be doing something illicit.
Yeah, I mean, if this was Studio 54, I'd probably be doing Lines of Blow with Truman Capote. But maybe I shouldn't say that because I've never done drugs. Don't do drugs, kids. But yeah, I mean, somebody would be doing something besides this in a disco. What was somebody doing in a disco with the original theme to Supertrain playing in the background? So yeah, once they changed themes, they kept the old theme. This was music playing in the disco. And what was happening? Somebody in the disco was watching the poker tournament on a 13-inch TV. Who would watch poker on a 13-inch TV at a disco?
A bigger question, Mike, is why is it this poker tournament on closed circuit, and why are people watching this on the train?
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, this must have been some sort of secretive society or something. But you're in a disco. You're there to dance, have fun, and he's sitting in this corner or standing in this corner on watching the poker tournament on a 13-inch television while all the music's blaring in the background and everybody else is discoing. That actually leads to the biggest issue of all regarding this show, besides like just bad acting, very few people of name being on the show. The writing is horrible. Horrible. Who goes on a disco in a train and watches a poker tournament?
Degenerate gamblers?
Well, why would they be watching a poker tournament in a disco?
Yeah. I mean, why do they not have TVs in each of the cabins or the bedrooms or whatever on the train? There's so much to do. I mean, that's like sort of going on a cruise ship, like the Love Boat, and you just like sit in your cabin all day because, oh, look, I'm going to watch whatever TV that I can't see at home. Oh, I'm going to go on a cruise ship and I'm going to watch Mr. Baseball half a dozen times. Not that it really happened on a cruise ship that I went on back in 1993, but it's
Mike,
possible.
Don't you dare knock anything Dennis Haysbert was in, damn it.
I wasn't knocking it. I'm telling an anecdote.
Good.
But yeah, I mean, it just was so bad, and NBC almost became bankrupt over this. And I gotta thank Greg for this. Greg, I want you to share the link that you sent me earlier regarding Supertrain about where one of the models ended up.
Okay, in an article from Herald Mail Media, which was published on July 1st, 2018, headline, After years of mystery, Supertrain arises. TV history item purchased by Hagerstown shop owners. After Ben Thorburn of Coin-Op Warehouse in Hagerstown picked up a jukebox he bought from a jewelry dealer in Philadelphia, the man told Thorburn about a train he had in an old barn. Thorburn didn't know what he would find, figuring it was perhaps an old Lionel train set. Thorburn climbed into the barn where chickens used to be kept and saw a grouping of dust-covered objects that appeared to be some type of train. It was much bigger than a typical model railroad set, with an engine and cars measuring about 2 feet wide and about 4 feet plexiglass like material served as windows in the cars, which sported a futuristic design. About a week ago, Thorburn bought the 9-car set for the man, which included long sections of track about 50 feet long in total. When Thorburn brought the train back to Hagerstown, he started searching online to figure out what it was. His research helped him realize what he had, the long-sought-after Supertrain.
So this guy found the Supertrain, and based on the dimensions, we sort of assumed he got the bigger Supertrain. He didn't get the little model that was on that 3,000-foot track. He got the 1/10 scale version. And I'm like jealous now. I'm wondering where this guy is. He's not that far away. Hagerstown is Maryland, which may be about like 7 or 8 hour drive for me, and probably similar for Chico, maybe a little bit less. And actually, Greg would be closest. But I'm like want to go down there and say, if you're willing to sell this, I'll give you X number of dollars. X could vary from a very low number to a decent number, but I mean seriously, I would buy that in a heartbeat, and I would buy like shelving for it. I'd put it down in my basement. I mean that's like a curiosity piece. I mean, on top of being history, albeit not in a historical sense, more in a hysterical sense. But that is like super cool. It was in a barn in Philadelphia, and this guy ended up getting it. So I'm actually very curious to see if he still has it, and like I said, if he's willing to sell it. I would hope he wouldn't ask for that much, but that's just too cool that the Supertrain is now in the hands of somebody who doesn't really know what it is, or does now but didn't when he bought it. And it was sitting in a barn. I mean, that's like horrible. That's almost like any sort of television history sitting out in the weather for 30 or 40 years, or you hear about the mistreatment of some of these tapes that companies had over the years, and they just didn't properly care for them. That's crazy. Crazy cool though too at the same time. So yeah, Supertrain. Its legacy, well, it's definitely one of the worst shows of all time, and actually in 2002, TV Guide ranked it the number 28 on its list of 50 worst TV shows of all time, and I'm genuinely curious to know what the other 27 were that were better, because this is a class of its own. But yeah, it was like universally panned. Even the new Supertrain, it just didn't generate any excitement. I mean, it's sort of like they're polishing a turd. Excuse the phrase. They were.
No, I think you were absolutely accurate there.
Yeah, I mean, you could polish a turd, but it's still a turd. And obviously, they went through 3 different formats and 3 different opens in 9 episodes. Yeah, this was horrible. Horrible. And even now, it's 40 plus years later, it's still the butt of jokes. Not many, but the thing is, whenever you hear somebody talk about bad TV shows, invariably the first 2 names to come to mind are 2 shows we've covered in the last 2 weeks. Supertrain and Hello Larry. Oh my gosh, the 70s were a bad time for NBC, and Supertrain. Chico, take it away. Supertrain. It was definitely.
It was like Supertrain was gigantic. It was silver. It was silver and red. It was garish. It was incredible. It was a thing on TV.
It was a thing on TV, and it wasn't a good thing on TV. It was
a big thing on TV.
I mean, I did last longer watching Supertrain than I did watching Manimal, so yay, Fred Silverman? I don't know.
Let's just say this is part of the Fred Silverman legacy, which, by the way, we've been covering for the last couple of weeks, in case you haven't noticed.
Yeah, and actually, this is like the end of the Fred Silverman era for now, because we wanted to cover Hello Larry and Supertrain specifically, and then actually next week we're going to get into some very special stuff. We'll talk about that in the second episode this week. I'm not going to spoil it just yet. When we put the second episode up, we'll give you a teaser for Christmas, because at least one of the episodes, I know all three of us have been like chomping at the bit to get at this. Oh, it's going to be a fun episode. One of the episodes is going to be really fun next week. Probably both, but we'll get to that later. So, as always, go to itwasthathingontv.com. You'll find all the episodes there. You'll find links to our social media. You'll find our email address. You'll find all sorts of fun stuff there. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, we thank you very much for your patronage. And until the next episode, which is actually going to be very similar to this episode. A bit. We're not going to tell you how or why, but it's going to be sort of in the same vein as this episode. So again, as always, thank you to Chico, thank you to Greg, I'm Mike, and we'll be back later this week with another episode. Take care.